Okay, this is a desktop video explaining fundamental principles and techniques for alpine skiing. It's by me. Uh, so basically what I want to do is first start off by telling you what I'm going to explain. Um, I'll start off with some fundamental concepts, then I'll get to several specific techniques. All right, so here are the fundamental concepts. The first of which is energy management. So really skiing is all about energy management, energy control. And I'll explain different types of energy involved in skiing. All right, categorize these as either useful energies or waste energies. And then we'll get into concepts of velocity versus acceleration versus force application and waste energies. All right. Let's see here. Okay, then the next fundamental concept is maximizing the distribution of force application in both space and time. All right. All right. Okay. Next concept we're going to do is vector analysis of forces and acceleration. So again, these are all fundamental building block concepts to understand. And then here's a basic vector analysis, assuming one foot, which is not true. There's 2 feet. It's just introductory to get an understanding. And then a 2-foot analysis and how that differs. It's very important. So we'll talk about the ski, establish some terminology which we'll use as we go along. Okay, parts of the ski. Here's a tip. This is called the shovel, right? Here's the waist, and there's a tail. You can see it's curved to facilitate turns. And the first technique we're going to look at is hip angulation, right? How to generate it and what the effects are. Next technique we're going to look at is hip rotation or counter rotation, right? How to generate it and what the effects are. And third technique is initiating turns by pressuring the tip of the inside ski. All right. Okay. The fourth technique is called energy storage, roll, and release. All right, we'll look at that. And fifth technique is minimizing vertical motion of the upper body center of mass. Okay, next technique, which I may skip, is minimizing lateral motion of the upper body center of mass. I'll talk about that a little bit earlier, so I may skip this. I may skip this too, but I may go to this. Maximize distribution of force application, right? And rapid transitions. I will discuss that too. All right. Okay, so first fundamental concept is skiing is all about energy management, right? I believe a ski racer should have a working knowledge of the types of energies involved in ski racing, which are as follows. First is potential energy, and potential energy is always stored energy. One form is energy stored based upon your position on the mountain. You have your highest stored energy, obviously, at the top of the mountain, and your lowest stored energy at the bottom. Another type of potential or stored energy is energy stored within the ski due to flexing. And this is the spring energy stored within a flex ski. All right. We'll talk about how to manage that to maintain energy to maximize maintenance of kinetic energy. Kinetic energy is energy of motion of the skier's body. Of course, the faster motion is greater kinetic energy. Kinetic energy of snow being thrown, right? When skis scrape against the snow, it can throw snow. Latent energy is stored energy or hidden energy when ice bonds are broken. That consumes energy. Thermal energy created by friction of the ski upon the snow. Right? Thermal energy is the kinetic energy of the particles that make up matter, both the atoms and molecules. Thus, thermal energy is a microform of kinetic energy. All right, so those are types of energies. Energy can neither be created nor destroyed. It can only be transformed from one form to another. All right, and the goal is to maximize the conversion of potential energy stored at the top of the mountain into kinetic energy of body motion. All right. All right, the goal is to maximize conversion of potential energy, max at the top of the mountain, into kinetic energy of the skier's body. To do this, one must minimize the conversion of kinetic energy of the skier into waste energies, right? Those waste energies are snow being thrown, latent energy, which is stored or hidden away when ice bonds are broken. It takes energy to break those bonds. Thermal energy created by friction of the snow upon the snow, friction of the ski upon the snow, especially in a skid. I mean, if the ski is running flat, well, you can't help that friction. The best you can do is get good wax. All right. So potential energy is converted to kinetic energy, and that results in speed. And you want to avoid conversion into waste energies, which is kinetic energy of snow being thrown, latent energy of ice bonds being broken, thermal energy created by unnecessary friction, for example, skidding. All right. So useful energies. Okay, so from here on out, I'll use the term bleeding energy to refer to the conversion of kinetic energy of the skier into waste energies. So it's bleeding energy or wasting energy. Useful energies are potential energy stored on the mountain, right, due to the position. Potential energy stored within the ski, if you can control, you can then release, right? And I'll teach you how that facilitates maintaining energy. Kinetic energy, energy of motion of the skier's body, right, which is what the goal is in ski racing. Waste energies are kinetic energy of snow being thrown, latent energy of breaking bonds, thermal energy created by unnecessary friction, like skidding. Okay, so let's talk about the concept of velocity versus acceleration versus force application, waste energies. Velocity is a vector, which means it has two components, both speed and direction. All right. Ski racing involves maneuvering around gates. The objective, therefore, is to attain the necessary direction change with minimal loss of speed or kinetic energy. All right, and that results in the fastest time, which is the goal in skiing racing. All right. So a change in direction is a change in velocity. Right, because velocity is both speed and direction. So any change in velocity, including change in direction, requires an acceleration. All acceleration requires a force. Force is applied through the skis onto the snow. Force application is where the kinetic energy of the skier can be converted into waste energies, bleeding energy, scrubbing speed. Right, the three types of waste energies I talked about. All right, so some more terms I want to talk about is shear force. Shear force is the threshold force needed to break ice or snow bonds. The energy consumed to break bonds is latent energy. The snow is then thrown, which is kinetic energy of the snow. A key goal, therefore, is to attain the necessary force application without exceeding the threshold force where ice, snow bonds are broken. That's a shear force. So along these lines, one concept you have to understand is the need to maximize the distribution of force application. In order to prevent breaking of ice-snow bonds, one must maximize the distribution of force application. Skis applying force upon the snow in both space and time. By maximizing the distribution of force application of the skier avoids concentrations of force that exceeds the shear force, where bonds are broken and snow is thus thrown, thus bleeding energy. The concentration of force application can be measured in two ways, either as pressure or impulse. Pressure is a measure of concentration of force upon a given amount of area, like pounds per square inch. Impulse is a measure of concentration of force application within a given amount of time. So if you pound something quick, there's high concentrated force, right? If you press on something slowly, well, that's low impulse. The key idea is to avoid concentrations of force, which exceed the shear force. To avoid breaking ice snow bonds, pressure and impulse must be minimized. There are several ways of doing this. One is maximize the distribution of force application along the entire surface of the ski. All right, we'll talk about that here. Second is maximize the distribution of force application along both skis. Right, use both skis to apply force instead of just one. Maximize the distribution of force application along the entire length of the course and through time. Right. Next is ski like water. That means ski with your body very soft and loose, so you absorb everything. This is especially important in Super G and downhill, where you got to keep your body as soft as possible. You go at high speeds, absorb every bump and roll, right? If you hit a bump and roll with a stiff body, that's going to exert an impulse or concentrated force upon it, which will scrub some speed, bleed some energy. This means keep your body loose and soft to absorb bumps and any other abrupt changes of terrain. This will avoid unnecessary spikes in force application upon the snow, which in this case would be impulse. More would be said of these four methods of maximizing the distribution of force application when we analyze fundamental techniques. I'll get to that again. But I'll just do a brief introduction of this. So you want to maximize the distribution of force application along the entire surface of the ski. Simply put, this means evenly applying pressure along the entire length of the ski in order to avoid concentrations that exceed threshold shear force. For example, Bodie Miller used to sit way too far back. He corrected that. When did he correct that? About 2012, 13 or so, right? He'd sit way too far back, which would concentrate pressure on his tails, which would then result in throwing up a huge rooster tail snow, which bled energy. And if you look at a still photo, it'd be like looking at a water skier. You know how water skiers throw up these big rooster tails when they have that one ski on? They're skiing, what do you call it, with the one ski. The principle of maximizing the distribution of pressure along the entire length of ski is a general rule that doesn't always apply. For example, when we get to discussions of slalom and giant slalom, there is a technique for retaining energy within the ski during a turn, which I call store, roll, and release. This technique involves applying greater forward pressure going into the turn to scoop energy and store it within the flex tip of the ski, and then rolling that flex point progressively backwards, rolling that energy progressively from tips back to the tails, and then as one exits the turn, to shoot that energy out of the tails in a springboard effect, propelling the skier forward in the direction of the next turn. So this is a means of conserving energy by storing it within the ski during a turn, as opposed to skidding through a turn and just creating friction and vibration of the ski and resulting in bleeding energy. This way you can make a clean carved turn at a lower speed by storing energy within the ski and then releasing that to convert it back to speed, velocity, kinetic energy. So you're storing it temporarily as potential energy within the ski. And there's a technique to that. Thereby, during a turn, kinetic energy is decreased by storing it as potential energy in the flex ski. Lower kinetic energy during a turn reduces the energy loss from skidding and scraping, and thus breaking bonds, all right, which is bleeding energy and waste energy. Instead of bleeding energy, energy is stored and then re-released as kinetic energy upon exiting the turn. All right, if you do that properly, this is a new technique as far as rolling that energy, but as far as jetting out of a turn, that's an old technique that goes back to like Jean-Claude Keely. As soon as they started using those plastic, what they call Jetsticks, right, that increased the height of the boot in the back, right? So that's old. But as far as the method of progressively storing energy in the tips and rolling it to the back, well, that's a technique that I developed. Maximize the distribution of force application along both skis. All right, the key to maximizing distribution of pressure across both skis is getting them close together, side by side. Now, you don't want to do this with a 2-foot method where your feet are like next to each other. You want to do this by what I call slip and slide. Slipping the inside ski forward as you slide the outside ski back. That allows them to come close to each other. All right, and it also facilitates counter rotation, or separation of the upper body from the lower body. I will talk about that later. When the skis are far apart, there is greater risk of loading too much pressure on one ski or another. Right? The key to getting the skis closer together, side by side, is a technique called counter rotation or hip rotation. So when you get counter rotation or hip rotation, that causes the inside ski to slide forward and the outside ski to slide back. Conversely, allowing the inside ski to slip forward and the outside ski to slip back facilitates counter rotation, so they work both ways. Having the skis close together side by side also reduces the risk of loading too much pressure on the inside ski, which can result in roll down, then slide out. I'll explain that when we look at force vectors, or inside ski blowout. I'll explain that later. It would help to have video. I had a video of Ted Ligety getting that, which will be explained later. Maximizing distribution of force application across both skis will explain in the next section on vector analysis. All right. So maximizing the distribution of force application along the entire length of the course and time. All right, this is something that is a technique I developed, which differed from the old method, which was pretty much to maximize running the skis straight and flat to maximize speed. But I'll show you how that is actually slower. Maximizing the distribution of force application in space and time means constantly being in a turn. Right? It means spreading the turn throughout the entire distance from gate to gate. Right? There are 6 considerations to be examined here. All right, so this avoids concentrations of force applications that will break bonds and throw snow and thus bleed energy. In the old method, when you run your skis straight for as long as possible, straight and flat, thinking, oh, I'm going to go faster, it's a shorter distance between 2 points running straight. Plus the skis are flat, so they'll run faster. But when you get to the turn, that requires you to make a very abrupt, harsh turn, which then bleeds energy, scrubs speed, and that loss of speed is what kills you, right? Because it takes time to regain that speed. All the while, you're losing, distance traveled in the amount of time. So even though if you're in a constant turn, right, you're taking a wider path, a longer path. It's more archy path. So the old way is to go straight, make a turn. Go straight, make a turn, right? But if you make a gradual turn, you're taking a longer path. But the greater advantage is retaining speed. All right, so type of course, I believe this applies to all 4 disciplines, slalom, giant slalom, super G, and downhill. But I also believe the advantage is much greater in the speed event. So this is a much more important factor in both super G and downhill. Right? Distance. Conventional wisdom has it that the shorter the distance between two, the shortest distance has it that the shortest distance between 2 points is a straight line. Well, this is true, but there's a trade-off. Skiing straight lines necessitates abrupt, hard turns when you get to the gate, which will greatly exceed shear force and bleed energy, scrubbing speed. Following this, it takes much more time, after the turn, it takes much more time to rebuild that energy, too much time. All that time you got to rebuild energy is time lost in distance traveled due to the higher speeds. The greater advantage, thus, is to maintain speed, even if it requires traveling a greater distance with broad sweeping turns. The common notion that constantly being on edge means greater friction. I believe this is a total misconception. When a ski is running flat, there is friction between the ski bottom and the snow. When a ski is angled on edge, there is friction between the ski bottom and the snow as well. All right. The confusion arises from confusing friction with shear force. Whenever skiing flat or being slightly on edge, you will have friction no matter what. However, by maximizing the distribution of force application along the entire course, when in a constant term, you minimize the risk of exceeding shear force, which bleeds energy by breaking bonds and throwing snow. Running straight requires hard, concentrated turns that exceed shear force, breaking bonds, throwing snow, bleeding energy, and thus scrubbing speed, which takes time to regain. And then you scrub it again when you make the next turn. Course terrain. Gate setting and snow conditions will affect tactical decisions, but the general principle of maximizing the distribution of force application still applies. Leg fatigue. Most of these, top-level ski racers have very conditioned bodies, so this for them may be less of a factor. But here's the idea: constant application of less force is less fatiguing than abrupt applications of greater force. So if you're running straight and then making abrupt turns, while you're running straight, you have very little force application. If you're constantly in a turn, you have a little bit more force application over a longer time, but you're actually going to be, it's going to be more fatiguing to make those hard turns, and I'll explain why in a second. This has to do with the difference between aerobic and anaerobic metabolism. Anaerobic metabolism is both far less efficient at producing ATP and results in lactic acid buildup. So anaerobic is your quick burst. That means without air. Aerobic is you're constantly breathing, right? So this is like high intensity force. This is more gradual, continuous application of force. All right, and anaerobic metabolism, from each glucose molecule, I believe you produce just 2 ATP. With aerobic, you produce something like 36 or something like that. So anaerobic is far less effective at producing APT. However, you produce it rapidly. That's the advantage of anaerobic. You can just pump out a lot of ATP. But when you have anaerobic metabolism, that results in lactic acid buildup, which degrades muscle performance. Both inefficient metabolism and lactic acid buildup result in muscle fatigue. In other words, the short bursts of force application required in turns when running straight gate to gate requires anaerobic metabolism, which forms lactic acid buildup, which causes muscle fatigue. Probably due, I believe one factor is the lactic acid and how that affects conformation of proteins. Anyway, I'm going to skip that. That's a little bit too advanced. The keys to maximizing the distribution of force application along the entire length of the course are quick and clean transitions and picking the right line. This is facilitated by lifting the legs as you transition over the hump, then laying them out on the other side, rapidly engaging force application without having to wait for the upper body to fall. So I'm going to explain this principle way down here. Right here. How you lift your legs. You're going from this is your upper body, here's your lower body. Your legs are laid out in a turn to handle the G-force of the turn. All right. As your legs transition across, if you leave your legs straight, same length for your legs, your upper body has to rise. Do you see that? Right? And then before you can apply force on this side, you got to wait for the upper body to fall. But if as your legs transition and turn and as they come across, you lift your legs, you see it shortens this, you can maintain your upper body center of mass at the same height. And then as soon as you transition to the other side, you can shoot out your legs, extend them, and you rapidly reestablish application of force. This is much slower. This is like throwing a ball in the air and waiting it to fall back down. Then you can apply force. This is rapid, boom, boom. Just shoot your legs out and you're applying force right away. Anyways, I'll explain that again later. But that's a key to applying for one of the keys. In fact, I'll explain how to get a rapid transition in a diagram itself. So rapid transition, there's many methods to increasing the rapidity of the transition. Where are we at here? Okay, so next is the old method. The old way of doing it is maximize running the ski straight and flat to get the shortest distance and also least amount of friction. But this requires hard, concentrated turns that exceed shear force, breaking bonds, throwing snow, bleeding energy, and scrubbing speed, which takes too much time to rebuild. All that while you're losing distance traveled, and which is time lost. Now, being in a constant turn results in longer distance traveled, but this disadvantage is exceeded by energy retention, and greater speed results in shorter times from start to finish, which is, of course, the goal in ski racing. All right, so fundamental concept number 4 is vector analysis of force and acceleration. All right, so I want to first explain one of the forces, or one of the accelerations existing, which is gravity. Einstein said that gravity is not a force, but rather an acceleration caused by the curvature of space and time. All right, pretty fancy, but the idea is gravity is not a force; it's an acceleration, and must be thought of as combining with other accelerations. Now, acceleration always requires a force, and a net force always causes an acceleration. Right? They cause each other. So acceleration requires a force, and then or an acceleration causes a force. Right? Also, the direction of acceleration is always in the same direction as a force, and their magnitudes are proportional. The greater the force, the greater the acceleration. Right? And the vectors are in the same direction. Thus, force and acceleration are somewhat synonymous. In analysis of force and acceleration vectors will be explained. We'll explain 1, the need to weigh the outside ski, and the principles of how to weigh the outside ski, the effects of weighing the inside ski, what can happen. All right. Sorry. So what I'll do is I'll try to develop some basic conceptual things in a rather simple way, and then I'll get more complex as we go along. Right. So to start with, we'll take a skier standing still. Let's say waiting in the lift line at the bottom of the hill, and let's say it's a 100-kilogram skier, which is about 220 pounds, roughly my weight, and so. Gravity, again, is not a force, it's an acceleration. And gravity is 9.8 meters per second squared in a down direction. So that's an acceleration. The units there are for an acceleration. Given the skier's mass of 100 kilograms, now force equals mass times acceleration. So if you take that acceleration times that force, gravity creates a force of 980 newtons applied to through the skis onto the snow. Force applied right at that point, right? Now, so the skier's body is applying a force of 980 newtons to the snow. What that means also is, conversely, the snow is applying 980 newtons of force upwards against the skier's skis. Okay, so it's an equal and opposite force. Now, if the skier leans to one side or another without shifting the rest of his body, so let's say he leans right at the hip without pushing the body this way, right? That's going to shift his center of mass to the side, right? And even standing in a lift line, you can fall down, right? So here's the force vector through the legs being applied up, but the center of mass shifts over, so this kind of represents it in an expanded view. upward force located at the point of contact of the skis, but the person leans over, so the center of mass of the upper body, right about there, shifts to the side, right? This creates a lever arm and a direction of rotation. So this is the anchor point. That's going to create a lever arm pushing down this way, and it's going to swing this way. The downward force centered at the center of mass, the skier will fall over. Right? It's going to rotate him over, and he's going to fall over. So this is a simple starting point. Now let's take a look at a combination of accelerations. All right, and that happens when you're making a turn. Let's say it's a fairly gradual turn, a 0.5 G turn, G-force turn. Right? We'll look at 0.5. Here's 0.5. Here's a 1G turn. Here's a 2G turn. You can see the horizontal component is getting larger and larger. So this is a small horizontal component, larger component due to gravity, right? When you want to look at the total acceleration, you have to look at the vector sum, all right? So vector sum of the forces applied. I'm jumping ahead here, okay. All right, so direction of the turn to the right, you're making a turn to the right. The body wants to keep going left, right? Right. The force applied by the snow upon the skis must be equal and opposite the force applied by the skier's body upon the snow. So the force vector is now at an angle, and it's a vector sum of both gravity and the acceleration due to the turn. Right? You can see it's more vertical because the horizontal component is smaller. Vector sum of forces applied to the skier's body upon the snow. Okay, so this is the body applied to the snow. This is the snow applied to the bottom of the skis. All right. So let's see. I want to teach you. So in the first case, I guess up here, when the person's standing still, the total force vector is straight up and down. All right. However, during a turn, the total force vector is at an angle. The same situation applies here, where you can create a lever arm. Now, let's see, what's the best way to explain this? So, in a turn, this is the combined force vector. If the skier leans to the inside, that's going to shift the center of mass over to this side. Now, that's going to create a lever arm in which the force application is being pushed up here, but the center mass is being pulled down by gravity this way, and it's going to pull the skier down. He's going to slide out this way. The skis are going to slide out, and he's going to fall. Now, if he shifts his mass towards the outside of the turn, his upper body mass towards the outside of the turn, what that's going to do is that's going to create a lever arm, which is going to pull the skier to the outside and onto the outside ski. Right? Now, to attain that, the skier has to create what's called hip angulation. Create some angulation at the hip to shift the center of mass of the upper body to the outside. Right? That's going to keep him up. If he shifts the other way, that's going to pull him down, and he's going to slide out. All right. I don't think I did a great job explaining that, but I'll hopefully do a better job when we get to 2-foot analysis. The idea is to keep the center of mass above and outside the force vector in a turn. This will create a lever arm that will keep the upper body upright. So this lever arm pulls you back up, keeps you upright. This lever arm throws you down, and you slide out. If the skier leans too far over and the center mass falls below the inside force vector, creating a lever arm that will shift weight to the inside ski, rotate the body down, causing a loss of edge grip, and the skier will slide out, like sliding into second base. There are two ways of raising the upper body center of mass. One is hip angulation, like this, All right. In giant slalom, super G, and downhill, another way is to get counter rotation. And then when you have counter rotation with your upper body facing what I call the 10 or 2 o'clock, so 10 or 2 o'clock to your skis, then if you jackknife your body with a crunch, then push the head and shoulders forward towards the 10 or 2 o'clock position, this will push the upper body center of mass to the outside, effectively raising it above the force vector, which will then load force onto the outside ski. All right, so I'll explain the dynamics of 2-foot application. So this is a simple, oversimplified example, assuming only one point of force application. But when you're skiing, there's really 2 feet through which the force is being applied, right? So before we get that, I'll just cover differences in turn intensity. Here's a 0.5 G turn, right? This is a 1 G turn where the acceleration due to gravity is the same as acceleration due to the turn itself, creating that centrifugal force. A 2 G turn, which is a very extreme turn, you have double the acceleration due to the turn than gravity. Right, twice amount of acceleration and force due to the turn than due to gravity. Right. Of course, you can see that requires your body to be laid out more and more. This you're standing almost straight up. Here you're more laid out, and here you're even more laid out. The more radical the turn. The diagram shows that with increased G-force in a turn, not only can the body be more laid out in a turn, it is necessary that the body is more laid out in a turn to counter the direction of the acceleration forces. However, in all cases, the center of mass must be above and to the outside of the force vector. So if this is your force vector, the center of mass has to be over here. If this is the force vector, the center of mass has to be over here. If this is the force vector, then the center of mass must be up here. Okay. Here's just a side note. If the skier weighs 200 pounds, then the leg strength required to overcome a 2G turn would have to be able to apply 500 pounds of force, or roughly 500 pounds of force. Now, to examine the effect of 2 feet application of force, examine a case of extreme skiing, right? So we'll, to explain the impact of the 2-foot application, we'll take a look at extreme skiing, which is typically defined as greater than 50 degrees of grade. So this is, let's say, 45, 50 degrees of grade. And it doesn't look like that much, but I tell you, if you stand at the top looking down 50 degrees, it looks like you're looking over a cliff. Let's say the slope is hard ice and the skier is trying to traverse it. All right, to traverse the slope, ski across it. Right, the skier must lean over, like looking down over a cliff. All right. So with this body position, this skier is going to slide out and then tumble, and then you're going to fall the rest of the way down, probably going head over feet. Right, boom, boom, boom. To properly ski this, you have to actually lean over the hill and look down. All right, and I'll explain this in a second. With this body position here, most of the weight is on the uphill ski. So the center of mass, you can see, is more over the inside ski. All right, the downward acceleration vector will be on the inside edge of the inside ski. So this is where all the weight is centered. And if this is the ski, it's going to be centered on the inside edge of the inside ski, right? And what's going to happen is you're going to slip out. That's going to slide out, right? And your skis, you'll lose your grip, and then you'll start tumbling down the hill. The inside edge of the inside ski will thus not hold grip, and the skier will slide out and fall onto his hip. And then, if it's this steep, you're not stopping until it levels out. All right, to avoid the above, the skier must lean out over the slope, right, and get the weight on the downhill ski. You want to get it on the inside edge of the downhill ski, and this is going to grip and hold you, and at best you'll skid down the hill, but you'll stay on your feet. This will shift the weight to the downhill ski, which will cut into the ice and hold grip. This may seem counterintuitive, but as a former skier, I know I wrote this when I wasn't skiing. I know this is absolutely true, right? Let's examine why. The vector analysis below is based upon a concept I created called anti-acceleration. It makes sense to me, but I don't know if it is valid. I call inertia anti-acceleration, because inertia is resisting a change in direction, which is resisting an acceleration. So momentum or inertia really is anti-acceleration. Acceleration is a change in motion. Inertia, therefore, can be thought of as anti-acceleration. It has also been called centrifugal force, which is not a real force, although it has real effects in a moving mass resisting a change in direction, right? So centrifugal force involves circular motion, which tends to want to keep going in a straight line, and if it's a circle, it's being thrown out. Just like, I guess an example is a washing machine on spin cycle throws out water and thus dries the clothes. The basis of momentum arm analysis, the force applied by the snow is through the skis, thus acceleration applied to the snow is at the point of the skis, right? The vector sum is actually closer to the outside ski because it's a combined vector of both feet. The anti-acceleration due to inertia, however, is centered upon the center of mass. All right, so taking an example of a 2G turn, let's examine a 2-foot force application. All right, so here you're making a turn, all right, and it's a 2G turn, so the horizontal component is much larger, therefore you're getting a more laid out position, all right. Now with the center mass lifted up with hip angulation or counter rotation combined with the push of the head and shoulders toward the 2 o'clock or 10 o'clock position, the vector sum of momentum inertia resistance due to acceleration, thus anti-acceleration, is up and out. So here's the outside ski. Most of the force is centered there. All right, that's a force vector. If you have hip angulation raising your upper body center of mass, right, this is going to be thrown up and out. All right, and that's going to hold you up. High inertial centrifugal force, anti-acceleration. Shifting the center of mass above or below the force vector applied by the snow will create a lever arm. If the center of mass is shifted up, a lever arm will be created which will cause weight to shift onto the outside ski, all right, that ski, and off of the inside ski. Again, this occurs with hip angulation and the center of mass up and over the force application vector. So if this is the stationary pivot point right there, the lever arm is going to pull you this way, and it's going to pull you up and over the outside ski, keeping you up. Now, notice that while the lever arm in the diagram above will rotate the ski up and back upright, the lever arm below will tend to rotate the skier down. The weight upon the inside ski will be lost. The ski will lose its grip on the snow, and the skier will slide out like a baseball player sliding into a base. All right, so here's the same situation. Now, force vector, again, is this way. All right. However, the center of mass shifts down to here. That creates a lever arm where this is the pivot point, right? And the lever arm wants to torque you down, all right? And what's going to happen as you torque down, that's going to shift weight off of that ski, and you're just going to slide out, all right? This rotation will cause roll down followed by slide out. So you're going to roll down, and then you're going to slide out, all right? Or another possibility is this can be maintained if you outrigger the outside ski, where you take this ski and really push it far out, all right, which shifts the center mass back up here. But when you do that, you load up your inside ski way too much, right? And you maintain grip while loading up the inside ski. And that can cause something called inside ski blowout, where that ski tip bites real hard, right, torques you into the turn real hard. It's going to twist you around. It's going to blow that knee up into your chest or even into your chin. And then it's going to spin you around and then throw you over. Okay, so here's some terminology. Again, tip of the ski. This is considered the shovel, where you first grip snow. Here's the waist and tail. All right, so here's the first technique. It's hip angulation. First, we'll discuss ways of generating it. The fundamental way to generate hip angulation is to drop the hip, push the hip down. The first step is to simply push the hip down toward the snow. But remember, the purpose is not to push the hip down. The objective is to raise the upper body center of mass above the force vector, and thus create a lever arm that keeps the upper body upright. Next method for generating hip angulation is shoulder position. Keep the shoulders level with the horizon. All right. Do not let the inside shoulder drop. Letting your inside shoulder drop will kill hip angulation. I often see ski racers drop the inside hand to the snow for whatever reason. Right. This actually drops the inside shoulder, which kills hip angulation. Right. Also, do not let your outside arm fly high. Do not let your outside arm fly high. All right. If as you're going through around in a turn, you let your outside arm fly high, right? That raises your outside arm. It also drops your inside arm, and that lowers your center of upper body mass. All right. Ted Ligety does this quite a bit. So one way of doing this is called gull wings. If you have your arms fairly wide and forward, a little bit forward, this helps keep your shoulders level, which then facilitates hip angulation. And the idea is this. If your shoulders are level and your legs are laid out, that has to drive down the hip. And when you drive down the hip, that maintains your upper body upright and above the force vector, all right, which gives you a lever arm that throws your body back upright and holds you up, throwing weight onto your outside ski. All right, now the gull wing also facilitates helping you keeping your chest facing downhill, which thus facilitates hip rotation. Right, so gull wing actually has two benefits. It helps you get hip angulation, but also helps you get hip rotation, keeping your upper body focused both directly downhill and your shoulders level. Outside hand position. As you approach the gate, push the outside hand across and then in front to of the outside hip. This will help drive down the hip. Okay, this is more in slalom. So as you're approaching the gate, your outside hand should push forward and down a little bit. This helps drive down the hip, pushing the outside hand forward and across the hip and then down a little. Will also help create forward pressure on the skis, helping you to initiate the turn and store energy in the shovel. We'll talk about this down here in energy storage roll release. So this is jumping a little bit ahead, all right? Helping you initiate the turn, store energy in the shovel of the ski. More will be said about this when we discuss a technique called store, roll, and release. Energy store, roll, and release. All right, so these are three methods of generating hip angulation. All right, now the benefits of hip angulation: one, it raises the upper body center of mass, raising it above the force vector, which creates, like I said, the lever arm that helps keep you up. Hip angulation allows the legs to be laid out for a high G turn without slide out by raising the upper body center of mass, creating a lever arm that throws weight onto the outside ski, keeping the skier upright, preventing roll down and slide out, like sliding into a base. So hip angulation helps you avoid knee angulation, right? Hip angulation allows the skis to attain the adequate edge angle to be laid out to the side and to thus grip the snow for a high G turn without having to resort to lateral knee angulation. So one of the things that you can do to get angulation on your skis to get a better grip into the snow is to do knee angulation. But the thing about it is, knees were not designed to move laterally. They're designed to move forward and back in a hinge, right? If you get knee angulation laterally, this can be hard on the joint, damage meniscus, and it can even threaten your ACL or MCL. Some examples are recently I saw Julian Edelman blow out an ACL because he tried to cut with knee angulation, right? Lateral knee angulation, that's just going to blow it out. Rex Grossman blew out his knees the same way. And I've seen other football players do this. So if you try to cut with the knees instead of the hips, you risk blowing out an ACL or MCL, definitely an ACL. Knees are hinge joints designed to flex forward and back, not laterally, right? So another benefit of hip angulation is it creates a torsion or strain in the body that facilitates flipping back to the other side. So hip angulation will create a torsion strain right at your hip, right? Like bending a flexible reed or like a fiberglass fishing rod, then allowing it to snap back. So when you're laid out on one side, it creates torsion, and that helps snap back to throw the legs to the other side. All right? Hope that makes sense. This will facilitate and so quicken the transition from one edge to the other edge. So if the legs are laid out to one side and you get hip angulation, right, that torsion, let's see here. All right. So if you're laid out and you have hip angulation, that torsion or tension right there, when you transition to the next turn, will help the legs sweep out to the other side. So it's like creating a spring tension or like a flexible reed, right, that you allow it to snap back to the other side. And that facilitates a speed of transition. All right. Now, what could happen if there's too much weight on the inside ski? One of two things can happen when too much weight is loaded onto the inside ski. With the upper body center of mass too low, below the force vector, loading too much weight on the inside ski and causing a loss of grip, the skier's body will roll down and then slide out. Right? The other is with insufficient counter rotation and too much weight on the inside ski, causing the inside ski to be far apart. So if you don't have enough, if you're loaded up on the inside ski and you don't have counter rotation, right? If the skier uses the outside ski as an outrigger, right, to counterweight, to lift the upper body center mass over the inside ski, too much weight will be loaded on the inside ski. The tip can grip hard and rip the inside ski around in a violent turn, bashing the knee up into the skier's chest or even shin while violently torquing them around and throwing them off course. And like I said, I saw this happen to Ted Ligety. He didn't get enough counter rotation. I also saw this happen to Lindsey Vaughn in a giant slalom course. Or a combination of both can happen. Hip angulation trade-off with minimizing lateral motion of the upper body center mass. I'm going to skip this. So now we'll talk about hip rotation or counter rotation. All right. So ways of generating hip rotation for GS and Super G downhill versus slalom. I guess I'll start with slalom because slalom is easier. In slalom, the turns are so rapid that it is hard to create the kind of upper body counter rotation possible in GS and Super G and downhill. Right. For the most part, to create counter rotation in slalom, simply keep your upper body, your chest, facing squarely downhill. Then let your lower body rotate around that. Right? So you're letting your lower body rotate around a stationary upper body. In GS, Super G, and downhill, it is the upper body that rotates around the lower body. This is especially so in downhill and Super G, where the high speeds puts a premium on maximizing the distribution of force application, which is a key factor in line selection. Thus, the line selection dictates the ski lower body direction, requiring upper body rotation to generate counter rotation. A big turn in slalom, wide gates that may allow for even necessitate upper body rotation. But never turn the upper body to face the next gate. You will lose counter rotation, and I'll explain what happens when you do that down here. Right? For giant slalom, super G, and downhill, in GS, super G, and downhill, a number of techniques can be used to generate hip rotation. Rotate the upper body to face the 10 o'clock in a right turn or 2 o'clock in a left turn. So if you're turning to the left, you want to rotate your upper body to face 2 o'clock. If you're turning to the right, you want to rotate your upper body to face the 10 o'clock position relative to your skis. Right? So you're turning to the outside. Right? You're turning away from the direction of the turn. You're twisting your upper body away from the direction of the turn. And then you bow to the 10 o'clock or 2 o'clock to lift the upper body center of mass. Right? So we talked about getting hip angulation, but if you're twisted with counter rotation, part of getting that mass up is simply to bow at your waist. Right? Because if you have counter rotation with your upper body twisted, if you bow towards the 10 o'clock or 2 o'clock position, you're going to bow up and out toward the outside ski. All right, does that make sense? As you approach the gate, aim the plane of the inside shoulder toward the gate with the outside arm pulled back and low. So as you're approaching the gate, you want to twist away from it. So you aim your let's say if you're making a right turn, you twist to the left, right? And then you aim the plane of your shoulder blade right directly toward that gate, right? As your outside arm, your left arm in this case, is pulled back and low. You don't want to let that arm lift high because then you lose hip angulation, right? You want to pull that arm back to facilitate counter rotation. While exiting a turn, immediately pull the new outside arm low and back, right? High, pulling it back high will kill hip angulation, while maintaining forward body position to maintain forward pressure. Pulling back the outside arm will create torsion, which will rotate the upper body outward. Do not pull back the outside arm so that it shifts upper body mass aft. Right? You don't want to lean aft. You want to maintain it forward. In the speed events, super G and downhill, you want to maintain it forward to maintain even distribution of force application. In giant slalom, you want to maintain it even more forward to initiate the turn by pressuring the tips more, right? And that's more similar to slalom, where you want to go into the turn with a lot of tip pressure. Pulling the outside arm back low will keep the outside shoulder down and thus facilitate hip angulation, like I said, right? In GS, super G, and downhill, pulling the outside arm back is also a means of shifting weight a little from forward to aft and thus releasing energy out of the tails when exiting a turn. All right, that's a little complicated. That comes down to energy store, roll, and release. All right, so hip rotation, counter rotation, these are the effects. You maximize distribution of force application across both skis. All right, so with hip rotation, the inside ski will slide forward as the outside ski slides back. Right? This will cause the skis to draw closer side by side, creating a narrower stance. And the closer the skis are side by side, the more evenly force can be applied across both skis. Like I said before, if your skis are far apart, well, force will tend to be loaded up on one ski or the other. This will minimize the distribution of force application, this will maximize the distribution of force application, and so reduce the risk of exceeding shear force, which will bleed energy by breaking snow, throwing snow. By not breaking bonds and skidding, this will effectively increase the grip on the snow. Without counter rotation, the skis will be far apart in a wide stance. This could result in overloading the inside ski, in which the outside ski acts more like a counterbalance, balancing outrigger. If the inside ski is overloaded and the tips suddenly grip, right, the inside ski will be ripped around hard in a turn, resulting in blowout, violently pulling the inside leg around, torquing around the body, violently twisting the body around, and then smashing that inside knee up into the chest of the skier, or even the person's chin. I saw Ted Liggety's knee like smack his chin. Also, with the skis far apart and weight loaded on the inside ski, the lightly loaded outside ski will be bounced around violently. So this is another thing that can happen. If you load up too much on the inside ski by not getting counter rotation, right, and then you're loading up your inside ski too much, the outside ski will be unloaded, and at high speeds, when it hits bumps, it's going to bounce around, it's going to like bash around, right? And you can blow off that ski off the binding. The binding can release, right? All right, I saw that happen to Bodie Miller, where he loaded up his inside ski in like a Super G or downhill course, and the outside ski was bouncing around. It didn't have enough force loaded up on it, right? It was just bouncing around loosely, hitting stuff, and that ski blew off. But of course, Bodie Miller has the balance and athletic agility to ski that one ski, so he made it down. Second effect, springboard energy out of the tails will throw the legs laterally across the next gate. Okay, so this is especially true in both slalom and giant slalom. All right, if you load up counter rotation, all right, and if you use what I call energy store roll and release, where you store energy in the tips and you progressively roll back to the tails, with zero counter rotation, what happens is the body is aligned with the skis, and this is the old school ski way of skiing, which is what people were skiing before I taught this. People would ski with their chest chasing the next gate, right? So they'd ski without separation of upper lower body, and they're largely upper body chasing the direction where they want to go, all right? And if you go around a turn, and if you get the springboard effect out the tails, where you release energy out the tails, what that does without hip rotation, that's going to throw your legs, your feet forward, and it's going to flip you on your back. All right, the skis will fly up, and the skier will rotate, flipping onto its back and out of control. All right. With counter rotation, on the other hand, with the springboard release of energy from the tails, all right, when exiting a turn, that will throw the skis laterally from side to side across and towards the next gate, which is exactly what you want, right? So your legs will naturally be thrown laterally. I told you already that hip angulation helps facilitate it by creating tension, like a fly rod or a fishing rod, or a flexible reed. But the greater effect is with counter rotation. And the springboard effect will then throw your legs laterally to the side and not forward, flipping you on your back. Effect 3, effectively increase the length of ski. All right, I'm going to skip this. All right, generate counter torque. Right, so when you get counter rotation, that creates naturally, just like hip rotation creates torque. Right, counter rotation creates a twisting torque. Right, that will so counter rotation will create counter torque within the hip body, like a twisting coil spring, causing it to want to snap around to the other side, facilitating the transition. This increases the speed of ski rotation for transition to the next turn, making for a faster turn that allows for increased time of force application. So the faster that you make your turn, the quicker you can get back onto applying force, right? And the quicker you can get back onto applying force, the more you can distribute that force in time, right? Minimizing the peaks of force application, which avoids exceeding shear force and breaking snow bonds and throwing snow. Bleeding energy. The combined counter torques from both hip angulation and hip rotation will make transitions quick, like a fighter playing snap rolling. I mean, you're just going to snap around fast. Raise upper body center of mass. Okay, so hip rotation in giant slalom, super G, downhill. I'm just going to talk through this real quickly. So, like I said, when you get hip rotation, you're turning to the outside, and then if you bow at the waist, that's the same as getting hip angulation. You're effectively raising the upper body center of mass, which is going to create a lever arm that's going to roll your upper body mass back upwards and onto the outside ski. All right, initiate the turn with the tip of the inside ski. This is something that I used to do to rip super radical turns. All right, turns I'm afraid of doing right now because I don't think my body can handle it. So these are the turns where I would bash my knees into my chest as they come across the hump so fast that my knees would bash my chest in a controlled manner, not like a inside ski blowout. The principles behind initiating turns by pressuring the tip of the inside ski. With counter rotation, the inside ski is slid forward while the outside ski is slid back. Also, the skis are close together, side by side, acting somewhat like a single unit. The forwardmost part of this single unit is the inside ski, and that's why you want to throw your chest towards the tip of the inside ski. You're going to utilize that ski length, and it's going to initiate the turn by pulling you into the turn rapidly. Now, you may think that may give you inside ski blowout, but what happens is, as you initiate the turn in this controlled manner with counter rotation, as soon as you start that turn, the centrifugal force generated, right? If your upper body center messes up, is going to throw you to the outside ski, right? So that's going to quickly initiate the turn with the inside ski, but it's going to throw you to the outside ski once that turn is initiated. By pressuring the tip of the inside ski, you're applying force at the foremost point of the two-ski unit, the single unit, right? Assuming that your skis are next to each other, maximizing the full length of the lever arm that causes rotation in the turn. Since levers multiply force, and the longer the length, the greater the force multiplication, pressuring the tip of the inside ski will pull the ski into the turn quickly, cleanly, and smartly. As the tip of the inside ski grips, the ski will flex, and the arc of the flex ski will further pull the ski into the turn. Though the turn is initiated by pressuring the tip of the inside ski, weight is quickly shifted to the outside, so long as the upper body mass is high, to the outside ski as the turn develops and centrifugal force builds, so long as the center of mass is lifted above the force vector. With the upper body center of mass above the force vector, the upper body is thrown outside, shifting weight onto the outside ski, avoiding inside ski blowout. So yeah, that's what I was saying. Even though you're popping your chest towards the tip of the inside ski, engaging that first, once the turn starts and the centrifugal forces build, and if you have your upper body mass high, that's going to throw your upper body mass towards the outside ski. You'll quickly load that up. I taught this back in like 2011, and I remember watching Marcel Hirscher first learn to use this. By initiating the turn with the foremost part of the inside ski, the full length of the ski is utilized, increasing grip. By initiating the turn with the foremost part of the inside of the ski, the full length of the ski is utilizing, maximizing the distribution of force application. So you're spreading force more evenly. This will avoid concentrations of force, which can exceed shear forces, breaking bonds, throwing snow, bleeding energy, and skidding the ski sideways. By initiating a turn with the foremost part of the ski, the full length of the design curvature is utilized. Remember, we talked about the curvature of the ski. So you're initiating here of the inside ski, using the full length of the curvature to turn the ski. Flexing the tips of the ski facilitates storing energy of the ski what? I don't know what I wrote there. So if you flex the tip, idea is if you engage first tip, you flex the tip, you store energy by bending it like a spring or like a fishing rod, right? That stored energy, you want to progressively roll down the length of the ski towards the tail, right? And then when it gets to the tail, it's going to shoot you out. You have stored and maintained that energy instead of bleeding it through skidding around a turn, all right? All right, for slalom, with counter rotation built up, right, simply pop the chest towards the tip of the inside ski. All right, so all you got to do is pop your chest toward the tip of the inside ski. All right, and that'll get that to the grip. That'll pull you into the turn rapidly, cleanly, and smartly. It may help to visualize a stick connected between your chest and the tip of the inside ski, almost as if you're like pressing down the tip of the inside ski with a stick between your chest and the ski tip. Then simply push your chest toward the tip, as if the stick would push the tip down. All right. Same thing is going to happen because of your ski boots. Without the outside hand position can also create tip pressure. All right. So this goes to the technique down here: roll, energy store, roll, and release. So the outside hand pushes forward and down. All right. The more down you push it, the more you press your upper body. Right? The more you get your upper body to press down on the tip of the inside ski. When you push the outside hand forward and across the hip to create hip angulation, if you push your hand lower, that will increase the pressure on the tip of the inside ski. This will, I said I'll explain that below. All right. For GS Super G downhill, like slalom, pushing the outside hand forward and across can help increase pressure in the tips of the ski. However, like I said, the focus in GS Super G downhill should be on pushing the head and chest towards a 10 o'clock or 2 o'clock position. This will both lift the upper body center of mass over the force vector while increasing pressure forward. So that's how you get forward pressure to go into a turn. You kind of bow towards a 10 or 2 o'clock position. Right, that gets your pressure forward, more than the hand. But don't forget that in the speed events, there's a premium on maximizing the distribution of force application along the entire length of the ski. So, yeah, and especially downhill and Super G, you want to just even out the application of force along the full length of the ski. Pressure the tip of the inside ski to initiate the turn. All right. Benefits of pressuring the tip of the inside ski to initiate the turn: increase the length of the lever arm that creates rotation in the turn. Since levers multiply force, this will make the turn initiation quick, clean, and effortless. Utilize the full length of the ski to increase grip. Don't waste the tip. Utilize the full length of the ski to maximize distribution of force application. Utilize the full design curvature of the ski to maximize use of ski flex in both to both arc the turn as well as store energy. We'll talk about that below. The overall effect is quick and clean turn initiation. This will decrease the time required for turn completion, and early completion of turn can have tactical advantage. Right? Finishing the turn early, being ahead in the course, in allowing more time to set up the following turn. I have a warning here. Do not get too greedy and attempt to store too much energy in the shovel of the skis. If you apply too much pressure in the shovel, it'll be like a plow, like a snow plow, pushing snow, braking you, right, slowing you down, bleeding energy by creating friction, and acting like a brake. You therefore need to feel for and find the optimal amount of energy stored in the flex of the ski. When I first started teaching this, I was watching skiers try to use too much of it. All right, energy store, release, roll and release. Introduction. One technique I used since the early 90s was to capture energy in the tips of the skis, then progressively roll the potential stored energy back through the ski, right, then shoot it out the tails. It would literally springboard me into the air, propel me forward. For a long time, I skied an old pair of 1985 Rosano Giant Slalom skis, and I learned to feel the entire length of the ski like it was part of my body. So I was able to really feel the full. I'd go into the turn with the tips, exit out the tails, so you engage the tips, and I make these small little arcs here. So I'll explain this first. I was able to carve the entire 7-foot length of the ski, right, within a 3-foot clean slice in the snow. So my turns, if you look back in my tracks after I ski, going up the chairlift, I'd see arcs like this, arc, nothing in between. I'm off the snow, all right? Now, modern technique with modern skis, you don't want that because you're getting too much vertical motion, right? But back then, to carve, I could cut really tight slalom turns with these long, straight skis because I learned how to use the flex, lateral flex of the ski. Okay, snow disturbance was nominal. I barely cut these slices, just nominal slices with minimal snow disturbance, with little energy loss. I did so by going in with tip pressure, then smoothly and progressively ski the entire length of the ski through that arc, right? So tips go in, middle ski, tail of the ski coming out, right? Through the same point. Exiting out the tails, thus the flex of the ski would start at the tips, then smoothly and progressively roll back to the tails. All right. So what that would do is that would store energy within the ski and then release it out the tail, so you don't lose energy. Key idea: energy management. Maximize retention of kinetic energy of the skier by storing it as potential energy within the ski, then releasing it. Goal: lower kinetic energy during the turn by storing it temporarily as potential energy in the ski. With lower kinetic energy during the turn, it decreases the risk of losing edge grip. So you're going a little bit slower, right? Losing edge grip, resulting in skidding, which breaks bonds. So by storing energy and going slower, you decrease the chance of skidding and breaking bonds, right? The slower speed facilitates a clean carved turn. There's no resort to stivot, which is a steer pivot. That's old method, right? Skid energy, where you skid and you have energy bleeding. All right. So this way you're carving. You can get sharp, radical turns by carving the turn. The key to energy storage, roll, then release, is precise control of forward shin and aft calf pressure in the boots. Now, you would think you would get that by, leaning forward, your upper body forward, leaning your upper body back, but no. This is accomplished by controlling forward and aft pressure with hand-arm movement, not upper body movement. Hand and arm movement is quicker, finer control. It's a quick response and quick and easy recovery from mistakes. It's quick release of energy. It's easy to control the amount of hand motion for precise control of forward and aft pressure as desired. The energy storage roll and release technique is more applicable to slalom and giant slalom. This technique has less utility for Super G and downhill because, at high speeds you want to maximize, because high speeds causes too much ski chatter, which obviates energy storage in the ski flex. However, this isn't say that it's impossible. Okay. All right. But the idea is, in Super G downhill, you want instead of rolling energy storage by alternately applying more pressure in the shovel, going through the waist, then exiting out the backs, you want to maintain even force distribution throughout the entire ski. That's the premium principle there in the speed events. So how do you do that? For slalom, as you begin to turn and approach the gate, push the outside hand forward and somewhat low. You can control how low you can control how much tip storage you get, energy storage, by controlling how low you push the hand. You push your hand lower, it'll press the tips more. You push your hand higher, it'll press the tips less. So push it forward and low, across and down as you roll the wrist to the inside, palm down. So you're going to roll the wrist to the inside, palm down, which is going to lift the ski pole tip above horizontal, or close to horizontal. You lift the tip up a little bit anyways. I tend to lift the tip pretty high. I maybe exaggerate a little bit. Now this also helps drive the hip down to get hip angulation, like I told you before. This will both drive down the hip, creating hip angulation, and help drive the chest forward and the tip toward the tip of the inside ski. So you get tip pressure. Pushing the hand down further will increase tip pressure. However, beware of being too greedy and trying to store too much energy in the shovel of skis. If you flex tips too much, they will act like a snowplow, pushing snow, bleeding energy, and act like a brake. Right? Tip pressure will flex the shovel of the ski, helping to initiate the turn, while at the same time storing energy in the ski. Speed will decrease as you store energy, right? While energy is retained, which will help prevent exceeding shear force, breaking bonds, throwing snow, and so bleed energy. So by slowing down, you help prevent this, which is all waste energy. After you block the gate with the outside hand and you begin the next turn, flick the wrist back to the side, to the outside, and up a little bit, while rotating the wrist outside so that the ski pole tip swings down, right, and your wrist faces more inside, and you let it tap the snow, right? In the old days, you know, when you had the long skis and you needed a lot of rotation force, you would get a solid pole plant, right, to help facilitate rotation. I mean, you can still do that if you have a real sharp turn, but it's usually not necessary with the shorter, more shaped skis. The ski pole tip need only tap the snow. However, for demanding turns, a firm pole plant can be used to facilitate lower body rotation, to redirect the skis for the next turn, and to build up counter rotation. Yeah, that helps you get counter rotation by getting a hard, firm pole plant. As the outside hand is flicked back up and to the outside, this will cause the chest to lift and up and back, progressively rolling energy, stored energy towards the back, progressively releasing pressure off the tips, and then roll the ski flex, the point of energy storage, which is where the ski's maximum flex, backwards towards the tails. So you go in with tip pressure, you flex here with hand forward. As you flick your hand outside to the back, rolling the wrist, that flex is going to lift your chest, and it's going to push it towards the back, right, in a controlled manner, and that's going to roll the energy storage point back towards the tails. When it gets back here, that's going to jet you out of the turn. Now you got to be careful not to get too much, otherwise you can be thrown. But at the same time, if you have a lot of counter rotation, your legs are going to be thrown laterally, right, as opposed to flipping you like onto your back. You can see when a person loses counter rotation coming out of a turn and they get the rebound, they're going to be tossed up into the air onto their back. Flicking the outside wrist also helps trigger hip rotation transition to the next turn, while facilitating rotation. I should get larger here. While facilitating rotation of the lower body to redirect the ski direction for the next turn and generate counter rotation. A hard pole plant will facilitate initiation of a more radical hip rotation. As you exit the turn, the outside hand, which is now back, outside and up, now becomes the inside hand. The old inside hand now becomes the new inside. The old inside hand now becomes the new outside hand, which is pushed forward across the chest. So you use alternating hands. It is through this alternating cycle of forward and aft motion on the left and right hands, which makes the control of forward and aft pressure quick and easy, and easy to cover from. So this allows quick transitions from forward and aft pressure, and it's minimal, right? It's if you're trying to use your upper body to throw it forward and back, it's clumsy. It takes too long. It's often too much, right? Your hands have less mass, right? So larger motions has less effect. For giant slalom, Super G, and downhill, key difference for slalom. In Super G downhill, speeds are so high, there is so much chatter in the skis during turns, which obviates, it kind of prevents storage, because they're chattering. You can see, if the skis are chattering through a turn, right, and they're off to the snow, you're not going to get a stored flex. You're not going to get continuous flex. So it obviates against steady and consistent flex, and thus mitigates against storage of energy in the ski, in the speed events. You're going too fast. This makes maximizing distribution of force application a premium in Super G and downhill. Thus, the rhythmic cycling between fore and aft pressure to store, roll, and release energy is less beneficial, except maybe at the start of the course where you're going lower speeds. However, once you ramp up your speed, you're not going to be able to store energy in the flex of the ski. It's bouncing around too much, and there's too much chatter. However, there may be some turns, especially at the start of the course, before the build-up is high speed. Skiers must experiment to discover situations where this technique can be applied in the high-speed events. The skier must feel through their skis when the technique is feasible in Super G and downhill. Right? In giant slalom, on the other hand, energy storage, roll, and release is very feasible and highly beneficial. Because and this actually was facilitated when they went to the longer skis. When they had the rule change for FIS to go from a shorter, more shaped ski for GS to a longer ski, a lot of people complain, but it was realized that you can get better jetting out of a longer ski. Just like I use a long ski here. The wrist, roll, and flick hand motion explained above can be used in GS, Super G, and downhill. For example, pushing the hand outside forward, down, and across the hip can facilitate hip angulation and forward pressure. Right. Also, as you exit a turn and flick the outside hand back, outside and up, this will help initiate the transition to the next turn. So this helps transition or trigger hip rotation. It serves as a trigger to get the transition to the next turn. Also, as you exit a turn, the inside hand becomes a new outside hand. I explained this already. Okay, I explained all that already. In the end result, the idea is this: you're retaining energy and then redirecting it. So you're storing energy, right, going in one direction, and then you redirect it and shoot it out at the end of the turn. So you maintain energy. You maintain kinetic energy. All right, so the next technique is minimizing vertical motion of the upper body center of mass. All right? So you want to lift the legs as you transition from one turn to another. This is what I call the hump. Now, there's no real hump, but it's almost as if there's a hump here, right? Like a hill, because as your legs come across, that forces your body up, right? And then you lay it out to the side, so it seems like there's a hump there, but it can be flat, but it's because your legs are laid out, and if your legs are straight, it's going to push you up. Then your legs are laid out over here, right? Okay, so why vertical motion of the upper body center mass must be minimized, right? Up and down motion of the upper body mass can be likened to throwing a ball up into the air, right? If you throw a ball in the air, it's going to take some time for that ball to fall down, right? You got to wait for it to come down. It takes force, and it takes force to catch it. It also takes time before it comes down, so you can catch it. So the idea is, if you let your upper body mass be forced up, well, that takes force. If you take force, that's going to create friction. It can even create shear forces, which break bonds, bleed energy, right? In any case, you're wasting energy, right? And then the next thing is, right, if your upper body center mass is lifted up, before you can apply pressure laid out on the other side, you got to wait for it to fall down again, right? All right, so therefore, the force applied to throw the upper body center mass up vertically, as well as the force applied to catch it as it comes down, can bleed energy, especially if concentrated in high impulse where it exceeds shear force. When the upper body is up in the air, effective force application cannot be applied to the snow until the upper body mass falls back down. This will delay force application, right? And this will result in concentrating force. So if you apply force right away, right? If you lift your legs, boom, you shoot your legs out, you're applying force. You can apply force for a longer period during the arc of the turn, right? If you wait for it to fall down, then when you apply force, you got to apply a lot of force fast. It concentrates force. Concentrated force is impulse. You stand a greater risk of breaking snow bonds, right? Bleeding energy. When the upper body is up in the air, effective force application cannot be applied to the snow until the upper body mass falls back down. This will delay force application, which will, 1, increase the time of transition, 2, delay turn initiation and the application of force, 3, obviate maximum distribution of force application in a turn, which can result in concentrations that exceed shear force and thus bleed energy. That's what I said. Right? If you wait too long, you're going to have to jam in a lot of force in a short amount of time, which concentrates force, which generates impulse, creates increased impulse. A fraction of a second will be lost in every turn, and that can all add up, right? So factors that create vertical motion, well, you can have coarse terrain, up and down bumps, all right? Crossing over the hump, which is crossing over the hump, that creates up and down motion. Insufficient counter rotation while exiting a turn. So remember I said if you exit a turn and you have insufficient counter rotation, your skis will be jetted, instead of to the side laterally, they'll be jetted forward, flipping you up into the air, right? Possibly tossing you onto your back if you get a lot of it. Crossing over the hump, there is no real hump. The idea is when you're laid out to one side in your turn, your legs are laid out, your upper body center of mass is low. As your legs transition across the other side to the next turn, the legs directly below the upper body will lift the upper body. So if you don't lift your legs, you don't compress your legs, as they come back this way, your legs at the same length will push your upper body up, and that's the hump. Right? This results in up and down motion of the upper body center of mass, which you want to avoid. Right? So how to attain this? Right? When crossing over the hump, simply pull your knees up when the legs cross under the body. Pull up the knees when the legs cross under during the transition to the next turn. If possible, keep the skis on the snow, allowing them to only brush slightly on the surface, so that as you're going across here, they're only brushing lightly across the snow. Any excess upward motion, so instead of keeping your legs straight, creating force to shove you up, lift them so that they're barely touching the snow. Then shove them out and engage them with force there. Right? Any excess upward motion on the skis means they will come down with impulse, force application, and thus bleed energy. All turns ensure enough counter rotation so that the springboard energy from the tails throws the legs laterally instead of forward and up into the air. Up terrain bumps. Okay. So for bumps, simply pull your legs up when you hit a bump to stay connected. All right, the idea is keep your body soft. Right? If there's terrain bumps, we'll just let your legs be shoved up. Right? And you keep your upper body low as possible. This will also avoid any unnecessary force application. So if you hit a bump, right, if you keep your body soft, you won't apply force onto the snow, which will not create friction and bleed energy. Down terrain fallaways. So a fallaway is like a bump in reverse before you hit the start of a fallaway. So a fallaway, you're skiing along, then it drops off, right? So what you want to do is you want to engage the skis right away. To engage the skis right away, you pull your legs up, making sure your upper body's as low as possible, going over that drop-off. And then when you go over the drop-off, you extend your legs. Right? If your upper body's high, you got to wait till your whole body falls before you can hit the snow again on the drop-off edge, the downslide edge. Right? So instead, go in with your upper body low, right before the fall-away. Make sure there's not a bump there, because if your upper body is compressed low, you hit that, it's going to throw your upper body because you don't have any spring compression in your legs, right? So, okay. Extend your legs more quickly to re-engage force application for the turn. So if your upper body is low, when you drop off, you extend them, boom. You can engage force application right away. All right, that's the idea there. So this is what you want to do. No vertical motion of the upper body center mass. You don't want the upper body moving up and down. Then there's no force pushing the upper body or catching it on the way down, which can bleed energy. And then the other key advantage is if you pull your knees up and your upper body's low all the time, you can more rapidly engage force application with your legs stand out by shooting your legs out. That's a lot faster than waiting for your upper body to fall. The key idea is to always keep your upper body center mass low to the snow. You pull your knees up here, shortens the length of the legs. compress the upper body down when approaching a fall away. Okay, I explained that already. All right, I'm going to skip this. Minimize lateral motion to upper body center mass. This is to minimize the application of force. And there's some. This is less important. It's harder to do. I'm not going to explain this. Raise the upper body center mass in a turn. Yeah, we talked about this already. I'm not going to, there's more detail, but I'm not going to get into it. I want to go to here. Maximize distribution of force application. So we talked about this way at the top here, how to maximize the distribution of force application. You don't want to apply force in jolts. That's going to exceed shear force. You're going to break snow bonds, right? That's wasting energy. And then you're going to throw snow. That's wasting energy. That's all going to bleed energy. If you see a lot of snow flying, it's either they're making a super radical turn or they're skiing improperly, wasting energy, right? For example, I gave you the example of Bodie Miller would ski too far on the backside on his tails, and it would concentrate force in the tails. It would break snow bonds and throw a big rooster tail of snow in the air, and that would slow him down, right? All right, so maximize distribution of force application. The primary purpose of maximizing distribution of force application is to avoid concentrations of force application, either in the form of pressure, which is concentration of force over surface area, or impulse, which is concentration of force applied over time, which then exceeds shear force, breaking snow bonds, throwing snow, and so bleeding energy. A secondary advantage of maximizing distribution of force application is avoidance of intense anaerobic muscle exertion, which builds lactic acid and fatigues muscles. Maximizing distribution of force application along the entire length of the ski, we talked about that. Concentrating force application too far forward or too far aft decreases the effective length of the ski, reducing your edge grip. That's one thing, right? Concentrating force application too far forward or too far aft prevents proper flexing in the full length of the ski. The full design flex arc of the ski is not utilized. It would also prevent utilizing the ski as designed, the curvature. A key thing I'm missing here is in concentrating too much force in one point, you exceed shear force for breaking snow bonds, right? And then you throw snow. So you lose energy both ways, breaking the bonds and then throwing the snow. Maximizing distribution of force application evenly across both skis. Remember we said that you want to maximize the distribution by using both skis, and if you have a lot of counter rotation, that draws the skis closer together. The inside ski shifts forward, the outside ski shifts back, right? That pulls them closer together side by side, which facilitates more even loading of weight upon both skis. Now, if your skis are far apart, like an outrigger, you're going to load one ski or the other. Typically, it's going to be the inside ski, and that's going to run the risk of inside ski blowout. The closer the skis, the greater the ability to weight both skis evenly. Experiment to discover the optimal amount of lifting the upper body center of mass to distribute pressure across both skis. All right. Maximizing distribution of force application along the entire length of the course. We talked about this already. This is especially important for Super G and downhill. This requires one, constantly being on edge. All right. I told you the old way. I remember watching Chateau Jansrud experiment with this during a downhill. During downhills, you have training runs for like 1, 2, or 3 days before the race, right? And he experimented with running straight and then a hard turn and then the next day on the training run, he experimented with constantly being in an even turn, right? Which increases the length of distance you're traveling, right? But it minimizes the force application. It spreads it throughout the entire length of the turn. You have no concentrated peaks of force application within the turn, right? You don't break bonds, throw snow. You don't skid out. You don't scrub speed, right? And the advantage is to maintain speed, because speed, takes time to build up again. You try to go fast, then you go slow. You try to go fast, then you go slow. Well, you end up going slower overall. Quick and clean transitions, minimizing vertical motion to keep the upper body center of mass low, so it is always available for force application on the snow. Yeah, you pull the legs up, right? Conventional wisdom used to be to run the skis flat as long as possible between turns. The idea was to get the shortest distance between 2 points. You're traveling the shortest distance. Now, I agree. You can travel the shortest distance, right? But you make tighter turns the whole way, right? And you're constantly applying the same amount of force. You can run straight turn, or you can run looping, gradual turns like this, or you can make tighter turns, which are consistent either way. Now, it depends upon the course set, depends on the steepness of the hill, right? If you can make a tighter turn, but a continuous application of force pressure turn, well, all the better, right? It's shorter distance, right? But if that requires excessive force, where you break bonds and you throw snow, right, that can be slower. So yeah, conventional wisdom is run the shortest distance, go straight, run the skis flat because there's less friction, less resistance. Well, if you're in a slight turn all the way, that's really not much more friction than running it flat. There is going to be friction between the ski bottom and the snow, whether you run them flat or slightly on the edge. It's nominal, the additional amount of friction and resistance when you have it on edge. A gradual edge all the time. A gradual edge all the time is a lot less friction than a hard, abrupt turn when you get to the gate after running straight. The big advantage of being in a constant turn avoids a concentration of force application, which exceeds shear forces, bleeds energy to make the turn a hard turn. Ski close to the gate, but don't ski at the gate, right? So you want to while Super G and downhill require wider sweeping turns and maximum. So you want to cut the distance by actually skiing closer to the gate, right? Let your shoulder hit that gate and so forth, right? Don't be off of the gate too wide when you get to the gate. So cut corners by skiing close to the gate as possible, but not too close where you catch a shoulder and it flips you around. Utilize the full rut in slalom and giant slalom. Start storing energy at the start of the rut. All right, I'm going to skip that. Keep the body soft, loose, and absorb all bumps to even out force application. You don't want the terrain to jolt you around, to create impulses of force. All right. By skiing with a loose body, all bumps will be absorbed, avoiding little spikes in force application, which could break bonds, throw snow. Think ski like water. All right. I should try to think that ski like water. Way back when I would run those long Rosinol giant slalom skis. Today I kind of think, well, ski with the body soft. The fact the skis will run with only sliding friction, minimize shear force, and subsequent breaking of bonds. Right, sliding friction is low friction. Maximize retention of kinetic energy. You get clean, quiet turns with minimal disturbance of snow. Right, muscle fatigue. I mean, the main disturbance of snow in the speed events is simply the speed. Right, you're going so fast that those skis are bouncing around, shattering in a turn, no matter what. All right, so rapid transition. So these are the things you can do for rapid transition. Minimize vertical motion in the upper body. Right, if you pull your legs up, right, you can shoot them out to the other side faster, right, and engage faster. That's rapid transition. Pull back the outside elbow when exiting a turn. If you pull back the outside elbow, right, which is the outside hand, right, and this is especially in Super G, downhill, and giant slalom. Not so much in slalom because you want to keep your chest locked downhill for the most part, right? But if you do that in the speed events, right, that's gonna facilitate building up counter rotation, which will help rotate the lower body following it. Wrist flick, the same thing, you know. Not only does the wrist flick cause forward and aft upper body mass shift to roll energy stored in the ski flex from tips to tails, a wrist flick also helps initiate the lower body rotation. If you really want to get a lot of rotation, then you can plant that pole, like I said, to facilitate a more radical lower body rotation. Slip and slide. This is when you slip your inside ski forward, slide your outside ski back. This facilitates lower body rotation to the other direction, right? You shift it. So you're making a right turn. You have your right ski slid forward, your left ski, outside ski slid back. If you shift that helps facilitate rotation to the other side. Hip angulation. Hip angulation loads up torsional strain like a flexed reed or like a flexed fiberglass fishing rod, right? Which helps it snap back to the other side. Hip rotation is like twisting a spring, a coil spring, right? Which helps rotation back in the other direction. It creates that torsion when you're twisted in one direction. Helps snap back that rotation the other direction to initiate the other turn. Of course, hip rotation then also facilitates slip and slide, right? Energy storage, roll and release, right? With counter rotation, the springboard energy released will throw the legs laterally. So when you have this, when you like doing a wrist flick to store energy, roll it and release, roll it to the back and release it. If you have counter rotation, that'll throw it laterally to the other side, and that'll accelerate the application of force, right? Combined with keeping your upper body mass lower. So they all kind of go together. Effects. Early in starting the next turn, you get full rut utilization, maximize time on edge, allowing maximum distribution of force application. So you're going from edge to edge quick, and if the quicker you go from edge to edge, then the more you can distribute the force throughout the length of the turn. All right. Okay, so I guess I'll try to do a review. I don't know if this made sense to people. We talked about skiing. The fundamental understanding of skiing is energy management. Know how to manage your energy to maximize your speed in the end, right? Know the types of energy, what are useful energies, what are waste energies, then know how to avoid creating waste energy. Fundamental counter 2 is to understand velocity, acceleration, force application, and waste energies. We talked about pressure and impulse, all right? Maximize distribution of force. Okay, all right. Well, I'm not going to review all this. So that's it for this analysis of skiing technique. All right. I don't know if it made a lot of sense to a lot of people. Maybe to physics majors, it made sense. That's it.